Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. This will be the final session of today's conference before we do the wrap up. My name is Shelley Seitz. I'm the Reentry Operations Manager at Iowa Workforce Development. I've been with this agency for about 8 years. Prior to that, I worked for the Iowa Department of Corrections for just about 20 years. I was a correctional officer and a correctional counselor. So if you've been listening to this conference today, you've heard things like inclusion, meeting clients where they're at, navigating reentry by finding the right resources, timing. So I want to share with you today what our agency is doing to better assist justice-involved population in our state. So we're going to talk about OWDS, the Offender Workforce Development Specialist. So what is OWDS? Basically, it's a curriculum. It's got 10 modules. It provides practical experience with tools and strategies targeting employment retention for what you're going to hear me refer to throughout this presentation as the JIC, or Justice Involved Citizen. So for those that have a criminal history. Brett is our consultant. He's actually out of Colorado, and he owns H2 Communication, LLC. So it's actually his curriculum that we use for this training. We've had 2 instructor trainings. One in 2022 was our first actually instructor training that we had in our state. Before that, we had to call Brett up in Colorado and have him fly in and teach us. So we thought, why not? We can do this on our own, be more efficient. So then we did a second certification of instructors in 2025, so just last summer. And now we have a total of 12 that kind of keep this program going. You'll see there we have almost 50 people that we've been able to certify. There's a little breakdown of the agencies they work for. Most of them, fortunately, are still with us at Workforce Development, but we do have some staff sprinkled through community partners and with the Department of Corrections as well. Our instructors, you can see there as far as IWD staff, we have Reentry career planners. So that's the team that I manage. They are career planners that are working inside the prisons. We have a total of 6 of those positions. 1 is vacant right now, so we have 5 staff currently doing that. Basically, they're providing employment services to men and women who are incarcerated, just like the career planners are providing employment services to those that come through our Iowa Works offices. So we also have career planners, managers, and a business engagement consultant staff. I believe also a program coordinator that are all located in our Iowa Works offices. So we're trying to add different departments within our agency to our list of certifications, just so when we go through that curriculum, we're getting someone else's perspective and someone else's experience in working with both our employers and the job seekers. We also have a DOC staff member. He is the reentry coordinator at the Mount Pleasant Correctional Facility. So kind of what's the goal of OWDS? Why are we doing this? So we want to educate career development specialists or reentry service providers on workforce best practices. When it comes to reentry, we understand there's many layers of barriers that exist, and we know that it takes lots of resources, again, as you've heard all day, that kind of are needed to be in place for the JIC to be successful with reentry. So we want to share that knowledge and pass it forward with any agencies, providers, or even our own reemployment programs, basically to better serve the Iowans that have a criminal history and are trying to get into the workforce or upskill into a better job in the workforce. So we'll just I'll walk you through what each module kind of looks like so you can see kind of the work we're doing and how we're able to provide the services that we are. So again, 10 modules. So module 1 is career development theory and how to apply it. So it goes through the 5 types of theories: trait and factor, developmental, transition, learning, and social cognitive. So what do they want to do in the world of work? Maybe someone hasn't had the opportunity to land their dream job, as we tend to call it, when we find a job that we just really love doing, and we can see ourselves there through retirement. So earlier you heard a presenter say that he wanted to do what his dad did for work when he grew up, because that's what he learned, right? That's what he saw as a child. So that's a textbook example of the learning theory and how it applies to career development. Basically, I see it, I observe it, I live it. That's what I want to do. So we look at where the job seeker is going to be successful. So questions come up like, what occupation is that going to be in? What skill set is needed to get them into that job that, or the career that they want to launch into? And then we basically guide them in career development to kind of get them where we can get them placed, get them in the job, and then help them understand these are the things you can do to keep that job, right? So we also look at not only career development, but we want to look at retention. Again, we want to have someone enjoy their job and find satisfaction in it. Module 2, this is where we talk about assessments, again, just as a tool to kind of help us as we go through this process with the JIC. So we learn the importance of understanding the different types of assessments, how to interpret them, how to use them in order to help with what we call career exploration. So again, looking at different options that this person may be interested in for work. One of the most common assessments that we use is called the ONA Interest Profiler. So that helps us determine a job seeker's work-related interests and explore career options that may be a good fit for them. 60 questions, and it's over work activities from various occupations. So basically they go through the assessment and you rate it as this is something I would strongly dislike or something I would strongly like. So it's going to go through different activities, building kitchen cabinets, gardening, things that show them a picture of what this, may look like. So then we kind of look at the assessment results based on what they've told us, based on the experience and the work they've already done. And then we ask, does your skill set match the desired occupation? Are you in a position where you can get into this occupation? Also looking at, level of education and what requirements are going to be needed to get them on board. Module 3, this is where we talk about facilitation skills. We've seen, especially working in this field, that being a great communicator and facilitator is key to building trust. So in this module, we practice motivational interviewing. Basically, we're trying to gather information on life experiences and work history in a non-confrontational way to assist them in making effective career decisions. So just kind of helping them process, again, their story and what that looks like and where they want to go in the world of work. Module 4, so this is the module for barriers and basically strategies to reduce them. So this is by far the biggest section of the curriculum. Again, several layers of barriers. It could be transportation, it could be their criminal history. Employers tend to see criminal history as that, or violent criminal history, or someone that has a sex offense in their criminal history. So for whatever reason, we've got lots of feedback through the years that, sometimes it's divided up into those different categories. So sometimes the convictions alone, right, their history is a barrier if they're trying to get into healthcare, for example, and they want to provide direct services to patients and people. Sometimes the criminal history and those that they've offended won't allow them to do so. So other barriers, childcare, housing, safety, mental, physical health needs. What does all of that look like? Understanding that, as we help with job development, as we network with employers, are there any other expectations or things that are going to be in the picture when they are reentering that may affect work? So again, focus on how to remove or reduce the barriers, and we also offer assistance to prioritize needs. So if we have someone that comes in and, they're like, I need a job, I need money, I'm desperate, I'll work, I'll do anything. Well, we get to talking through, the gathering of information and facilitating conversation. If they don't have a house, if they're homeless, if they don't have a place to lay their head at night and to shower and to feel safe, then our priority is probably today not going to be getting them a job, right? So trying to help them understand what their needs are and assist wherever we can, also while prioritizing. And they also, in this module, we put the students through the Reentry simulation. So it was created by the Department of Justice, and basically it simulates someone getting out of incarceration for the first 4 weeks. So it's like 15 to 20 minute time periods times 4. So each week is 15 to 20 minutes. And then there's multiple stations around the room that they'll have to check in. Maybe they have to go to court, maybe they have to do a drug screen. see their parole officer, go to social services to get some type of assistance. They have to go to work. So there's like little transportation tickets, and again, it really simulates all the different areas they have to navigate. Usually, it's pretty chaotic. I know the first time I went through it, it caused a lot of feelings I wasn't prepared for. Just really anxious and kind of felt defeated. But I think that's totally the goal of the simulation, right? Is to kind of walk in someone's shoes that you haven't walked in before. So if you ever get a chance to participate in the reentry simulation, I would highly suggest that you do. Module 5, this is working with groups. So we go through one-on-one facilitation versus group interactions and facilitation. Again, always looking at how can we be a better facilitator. We know that we are going to be in this, agency teaching career readiness topics or administering those assessments I talked about. It could be training, whether we're instructors in this class or maybe just training other professionals on the work that we do or as new systems roll out. And then facilitating in a group style setting. So we do offer a workshop I'll talk about in a little bit where we can offer that like in a group setting. So, and this is kind of where professional development happens, right? Like we talk about, even in our own group of class when we're instructing the participants and, there's side talk going on or someone blatantly disagrees with the material being presented by the instructor. So we have to figure that out, right? We have to problem solve and we have to understand, how to get through that scenario in the least confrontational way that we can. So I feel like a lot of professional development happens in this module. Module 6, this is where we talk about ethics. So we review the ethical standard, obviously talk about its purpose, why we have it in place, learn how to maintain professional boundaries and model a business relationship with the JIC. And that's one of the things I love about the classes. We usually get a mix of people that have different experiences for work. So sometimes we get someone that's never worked inside of a jail or a correctional facility and doesn't really understand the importance, I guess, of having those professional boundaries, knowing that, manipulation could occur or, sometimes unsafe situations they could end up in. So it's always good to have a mix of our class to kind of talk about some of those situations they've been through and how they moved forward. And we know that career development, obviously that's our lane. That's where we are confident. That's where we have a skill set. So just understanding that while we may have all of these resources that we can refer people to, that we're not a subject matter expert in them, right? So just knowing when to step up and say, okay, this is a barrier you've identified and we want to address it. So we're going to refer you to this service provider because they're the expert and they can help you with that. So, and then collaboration on complex cases with our fellow OWDS. So just knowing when, again, saying, hey, I need help. Like, I think I've exhausted the options or I'm running into dead ends or I'm missing something. I'm not understanding why we're not able to move forward with the career development. So just kind of phoning a friend and talking about some of those complex issues that we come across. And also, again, creating that relationship and rapport with each other as colleagues, but also with our managers, right? If something happens that we feel is inappropriate, or maybe we think we've crossed a line and intervened where we shouldn't have, for example, then, notifying our manager that, hey, this happened and, I want to talk about it and see what I could do better next time. Module 7, so this is assisting basically with the career planning, job placement, and retention. So how to effectively search for jobs, right? We go through the different ways. What's going to be the most effective for that person in their situation? Are they computer savvy? Are they able to navigate those things on their own? Or are they someone that doesn't have a lot of experience with that? So we kind of got to start entry level when it comes to job searching. We practice mock interviews with them to, again, just help them better be prepared. Discuss the importance of the resume and its purpose. So we preach, the purpose of a resume is to get the job interview. Once you get the interview, then, yep, you got to worry about those questions and kind of navigate what that looks like. Perhaps they'll need to talk about their criminal history. So we also go through like an overview and 4 steps on how they can discuss their criminal history with a potential employer. We have often used what we call a letter of explanation. So it kind of just talks about you as a person and how your skill set is preparing you for this job and you would like an opportunity. Um, Kind of like just being transparent for employers that do background checks. We also, tell our job seekers that just be honest. That if they do a background check, then they're going to find whatever's out there that's in your criminal history. So just kind of talking about that for some people. They haven't really talked about it. They haven't, said those words out loud. This is my story. This is what I've done, where I've been, where I'm going. So sometimes it can be a little stressful. So we want them to be able to articulate that to an employer in a way that they understand and that they feel comfortable as far as what they want to share and how much they want to share with employers. And then the last piece of this module, we're basically outlining what an employer expects from an employee. So kind of like, what are the expectations? Again, we're looking at job placement. Yes, you got the job. Now, how do you keep the job? So focusing again on retention, kind of the do's and don'ts and what that looks like in the professional world. Module 8, so this kind of goes through history, influence of crime, punishment, incarceration. It talks about, the effects of the release directly related to employment. So we talk about, what is history? What does incarceration and rehabilitation look like through the decades? How does incarceration affect them as a job seeker? So we talk about, behaviors, attitudes, supports, or lack of support systems, just kind of like where they're at today, knowing that to move forward, they may have to lose some of those habits or behaviors that they picked up while they were incarcerated. And then we, focus on making a great match. We know that if we can do a good match with the employer and the job seeker, then hopefully that's going to increase job satisfaction, which will also increase retention. So the 5-factor model that you see up here, it is a good employee fit activity, but we don't use that here in Iowa currently. It's still in the curriculum, so we still go through and we talk about it and what it looks like. There's a price tag with it, unfortunately, so it's just not something that we've adapted to using. But we use other tools and assessments to kind of guide us through that process. So keeping in mind that we want to make a great match, but we don't necessarily have to use the 5-factor model to do so. Module 9, this is a newer addition to the curriculum, and I love this module because it talks about serious psychological distress, or what Brett calls SPD. So mental health issues, right? So impactful areas could be someone from a lower socioeconomic status. It could be their education level, race, ethnicity, maybe the neighborhood they grow up, high crime or high poverty, and then even just chronic stress, right? So we talk about a little bit of neuroscience. We don't go too deep in the woods with it, enough to understand what happens to our body and the way our brain reacts with the fight, flight, or freeze response. And then we talk a lot about, what behaviors and attitudes could look like in the world of work for someone that is experiencing a serious psychological distress period or an episode. Because, sometimes it may come out as they're confrontational or they're violent or they're short fused. And when in reality, it's they are dealing with things that they just need a minute to process. And then we help them, how do you advocate for yourself? How do you talk to an employer saying, these, are things I need in my work environment? This is what's going to allow me to be more successful. Or these are some things that could trip me up. So just trying to be transparent. Again, talking about significant mental health issues, hopefully they're managed and everything goes as planned, but we know that doesn't always happen, right? So just how to prepare for some of those conversations. The last module is business services and employer relations. So here we talk about workforce development, economic development. They're tightly aligned, right? Both aim to create and sustain prosperous communities, economic development by supporting business growth and job creation, and then workforce development by ensuring that workers have the skills and opportunities to meet the needs of the employer, right? To fill those jobs. So basically, we're looking for what are the employer needs and then what are the needs of the available workforce. How do we connect them? How do we come up with, statements to, again, advocate for second chances, and showcase this pipeline of talent to employers that are willing to hire those that have a criminal history. So now that's kind of a rundown of the 10 different modules and what that looks like and what we focus on in hopes of the goal that we'll reach for each one. So now we can kind of look at how we are implementing OWDS now. So again, we have those reentry career planners that are in the prisons. They're all certified. They teach the Emerge curriculum. It's actually a workshop. It stands for Empowering and Motivating Ex-Offenders to Reach Gainful Employment. So think of it as a work readiness workshop specific to those that are justice involved. They're collaborating with DOC staff, the counseling staff that are working on reentry plans and exit plans, just kind of verifying, yep, this person's going to live in this area. Yep, they have these supports. Or again, are there some other things? Are they going to need additional treatment? Or maybe the level of supervision to know, again, if it's going to affect work schedules, like do we need to accommodate that? Do we need to look at that, consider maybe you should work a later shift or an early morning shift? So lots of collaboration on what that looks like. And then in our Iowa Work Centers, we're also teaching the Emerge workshop. We're doing referrals to OWDS also when they're in the prison. If they're working with someone and they're not placed in a job yet, then we'll do a referral to the local iWorks office and say, hey, this person's coming out and they want some additional help. And then they'll connect that way. We partner with work release facilities. Most of our Iowa Work Centers have a work release facility in the backyard, right in the community. So we've put a lot of work into making it intentional to partner, to reach out and talk to facility staff, find out what their needs are with where they're at in their facility, the population, what the labor market looks like in that area, and just trying to connect everybody again to employment that needs to have a job. We do, again, a lot of referrals to our core partners. Again, there's just things that we can't handle, but we know that it's a barrier or a want. So we try to refer them to the right person to make sure that, again, we have a successful reentry. We do fair chance hiring events. We actually have had a few events in the prisons recently. So we will bring employers and service providers into the prison and allow the incarcerated population to present themselves with a resume and just kind of wherever that conversation takes them as far as employers connecting with them for potential hires. We also collaborate with the BEC, which is our agency's business engagement consultant. So usually the career planners are focused on helping the job seeker, right? Doing the job search, getting them connected to employment, where our business engagement consultants are focused on the employer and making sure that they're taking into consideration their needs and advertising and helping them hire and attract the workforce that they're after. And in the community, we're also teaching Emerge. Some of our centers are partnered up with their work release facilities in the community. So we have staff that go into the work release facilities and hold workshops there. At other centers, we have staff that kind of come over with residents of the work release facility, and they get involved in services and use computers while they're there. So it really just depends on what we have worked out in that area. And then the last thing we're doing is basically, again, just educating. This is what we do. This is why we're doing it. This is how you can get involved. This is how you can partner as an employer. These are kind of some of the things that we're seeing with trends. So we're just trying to get people into the workforce. So I did throw up a couple case examples here just to kind of put it all together, what we're talking about here. So the first example is a gentleman was incarcerated at the Newton Correctional Facility, and he was enrolled in the Homes for Iowa program. So if you haven't heard about the amazing Homes for Iowa program, basically it's a home building site right on grounds of the correctional facility. So men work that program and they build homes. They're set like on pylons, and when they roll out in a fancy home moving machine, I guess you could call it. It's quite a piece of equipment. Then they're going down the highway and they're pulling up to the property owner that's purchased them. So it's an amazing program. So they're building homes. And he started the electrician registered apprenticeship program. He worked with prison industry staff and also completed his NCCER. So he was getting on the job training while he was going through that apprenticeship program. And then he applied for his electrical apprenticeship license and IPI staff and the Reentry career planner that's there at the prison. They helped him get the needed documents and get the application moving. Of course, create a resume. Again, talked about how do you explain your criminal history to a potential employer. And the family was able to help pay the fees that went with that application process. So he was granted his license. He actually had 2 job offers, and he accepted a position at a company in Iowa making $21 an hour to start, and he started as a 3rd-year apprentice. So that was a pretty great success story, and kind of a good example that shows it takes a lot of people, right? It takes a lot of resources to kind of pull these success stories together. So fortunately, he was able to be employed, and last I knew, he's still there. So he's doing really well. Another case example, we had a gentleman released from incarceration. He was required to register as a sex offender and was residing at the Work Release Center. He met with the OWDS, and we basically did an intake interview, gathering some of the information, talked about career exploration. He completed the Emerge workshop with us. He had a great resume that the OWDS had created for him. And then we were able to kind of sit down and look at the sex offender registry. That's all managed by Department of Public Safety, but the website itself is public, so we're allowed to get on there. We're only looking for, are there any employment exclusions? Like, is there anything that we should avoid, in the world of work, or is there any restrictions when you actually get employed? So kind of talked about what that looked like relevant to his employment availability. And we assisted with his job search. The Work Release Center staff were very understanding, and so was his parole officer, because he had to come obviously within hours that the OWDS was available at the center, and it was on a bus route, so he did make several trips. And then he became employed, and of course was able to advance out of the work release facility to his own housing. So he had kind of reached back into the OWDS staff with a kind thank you that pretty much said, I wouldn't have been able to do this without your help. Like, it was just really overwhelming, and it was just a lot of steps to make sure he had in place to become employed, right? And then to get out of the facility, and then to get his own housing. Like, he was just chipping away at all the goals that he had set up. So that's always great when we hear back from someone that was able to be successful after receiving services. So now kind of looking ahead at next steps. Again, we offer this class once a year. We're going through it right now. So we'll have another group of graduates in July. And we always are looking for ways to improve the program. So, we worry about feedback from class to class. How can we change it up, or what is something that, that wasn't desirable or that we could do better? And then educating JICs, on the incentives that the employers can take advantage of for hiring them, educating employers on the same, and just engaging with employers. Basically, kind of, sometimes I call it challenging hiring practices. Like, why can't you hire someone with a criminal history? Or sometimes it's the other question, why do you hire people that have a criminal history? Because we learn from them. So again, just planting that seed out there and making sure that we continue to grow the program in the state. So that's kind of all I have for the overview of what we're doing in Iowa with OWDS. So if you have any questions, I can take those now.
Hey, Shelley, there was one question in here. I think Michael was referring to maybe the case study, the last one you were going over, and he asked, was the federal bonding program used in the process?
So that one, I know that we gave him the voucher. I'm not positive that the employer called me to issue the bond. So typically for what we've kind of adopted as a best practice, when we meet with the JIC and the OWDS or our career planner staff in the work center, when they have that one-on-one career readiness appointment, they're talking about the incentives. They're printing out, it's called a voucher. It's just this nice letter that says who they are and that they're eligible for this program, and then they just need to call Shelley at iWorkforce Development, and she'll get the bond issued to the employer. So that's kind of our best practice. It seems to be working well. Like I said, sometimes they call, and other times it's just an opportunity to get a little bit further in the selection or in the interview with conversation.
Another question someone just threw up in here. Andrew asked, have you ever run into employers doing, quote, background checks by looking into Iowa courts?
Yeah, we have had
Yeah.
conversations with employers. More so, the employer kind of reaches out and starts that conversation. So, I mean, I think the frustrating part for me, someone that's been in this space for a really long time and wants to retire in this space, is there's not really any set process or platform that an employer can use for a background check. So, we're just subject to whatever that they pay for or whatever free service they choose to use when we apply for a job. So courts online can be challenging if you don't know how to use it properly. Obviously, it's a free service. It is a good place to go and look up criminal history, being mindful that it's just Iowa, right? It's only Iowa's electronic filing system. So sometimes we work with job seekers and they say, "Oh, I was arrested in 4 other states too." So obviously, it wouldn't work for out-of-state history. But yeah, we've heard that from employers, kind of positive and negatives with using that system.
Any other questions, guys? I don't see anything else up here in the chat. Great job, Shelley.
Thank you.